Right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you're connecting from. Welcome to yet another Citrix Ready webinar, where we showcase how Citrix and our partners like Acceptto here with us today have integrated to deliver valuable products and solutions to common problems faced by our customers. Today we'll see how Acceptto, using their continuous behavioral authentication technology, helps really safeguard Citrix Workspace from identity thefts in a really cool and efficient way. They use artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies to make it happen and really believe in the concept of eliminating passwords. So stay tuned, a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I'm Anil Kumar, your host slash moderator for today. I'm a technical marketing manager at Citrix Ready, responsible for networking and security ecosystem of Citrix Ready partner. I've been with Citrix for a little over 6 years now, and pleasure to have the opportunity to present here today. Along with me today, I have Shahrokh Shahidzadeh from Acceptto. Hey Shahrokh, welcome to the webinar. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, Anil. Thank you. Hello, everyone. This is Shahrokh Shahidzadeh. I'm Acceptto's CEO, and basically I'm here to give you an overview of how we integrate with Citrix and in particular Workspace. Our company is focused on passwordless, intelligent authentication, and we'll go through it today. Thank you for hosting us.
And hello, my name is Stefano. Oops, sorry.
Welcome, Shahrokh. Welcome to the webinar. Pleasure to have you with us today. And we also have Dr. Stefan with us. Hey, Stefan.
Hi, Anil. Sorry.
Thank you.
So, I'm Stefan. I'm the principal researcher at Acceptto and an expert for artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I will explain to you how we use these techniques to eliminate passwords and harm in the future.
Thanks, Stefan. Welcome to the webinar once again. Next slide, please. So in terms of the agenda, we'll have a very brief introduction about who Acceptto is and what they do. I'll take it over then and talk a little bit about how Citrix Workspace will evolve in the coming few months. And then I'll hand it over to Shahrokh and Dr. Stefan again to explain how they do the continuous behavioral authentication, how it integrates with Citrix Workspace, and also our Citrix Analytics integration. And Dr. Stefan is going to walk us through how the behavioral modeling and how they are really utilizing the artificial intelligence and machine learning in their product. And last but not least, we'll be continuously monitoring the questions from your end. So please, so if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the control panel to post your questions. We'll take them at the end of the webinar. Next slide, please. So I wanted to provide a very quick overview of what Citrix Ready is. Citrix Ready, it's a partner program where we identify recommended solutions that are trusted to enhance Citrix environment for a digital workspace, networking, and our cloud services. All the products which are featured in our Citrix Ready marketplace have completed verification testing, thereby providing confidence in joint solutions which we offer. And through the online catalog and the Citrix Ready branding program, our customers can easily find and build a trusted infrastructure. Also, we not only demonstrate current mutual product compatibility, but also through continued industry relationship, we ensure future interoperability with the coming versions as well. So if you'd like to learn more about Marketplace, you could visit the below site. And with that said, let me hand it over to Sharok to introduce what Acceptto is and what they do.
Thank you, Anil. A little bit about Acceptto. Again, thank you all the audience for attending, and hopefully the questions that you asked during this session and follow-up questions, we can take care of it between us and the Citrix team. A little bit about Acceptto. Acceptto actually just came out of stealth in 2018. We have been a partner since 2018 with Citrix Ready program, and we're serving millions of users across the board in healthcare, financial institution, and education, providing them a continuous authentication using passwordless solutions, as well as traditional legacy solutions where compliance requires having passwords and multi-factor authentication. Basically, as far as what we do and how we are different is we have a term we call continuous behavioral authentication. Continuous behavioral authentication addresses some of the shortcomings of the existing binary authentication, and I classify binary authentication as solutions that they rely on passwords, two-factor and some multi-factor solutions, including biometrics. The continuous behavioral authentication provides a step-up authentication not only at authentication stage, but also most importantly post-authorization, because that's where all the evil happens and all the problems comes after authorization when somebody is already in. The way we need to take a look at what does Acceptto do in a quick glance as far as an overview. By integrating different signals from the user, both the digital and the behavioral signals from the user, what we can deliver is we can detect anomalies and abnormalities of a user behavior. And through that, we can deliver continuous behavioral authentication. How we do it, we use a mixture of AI/ML expert systems and InfoSec and other type of expertise, the human's expertise to classify and detect and model the behavior of the user, and real-time assign a risk score associated with each transaction, each login, each click of application, line of business application, and continuously validating the user's identity, not only during the authentication, as I mentioned, but also post-authorization. Why we do it is the reason why we do it this way is because authentication in general is not a start and end event, but it has a continuum that goes throughout the session. And by doing this, we can detect and prevent any type of identity access fraud and across the enterprise, and particularly also the end users and consumers. And all of it without passwords, with full privacy and protection of the identity of the individuals. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually, with that introduction, hopefully that was helpful. The key words there was continuous authentication, post-authorization, anomaly detection, and passwordless. I'm going to pass it back to you, Anil, to talk a little bit about the evolution of the Citrix Workspace and what has happened and what great features Workspace has.
Thanks, Sharok. Indeed, great information to start with. Thanks for that. So let's see how Citrix Workspace has evolved and what we have in store coming up in the near future in what we call as intelligent workspace experience. So before I dive into that, I just want to ensure that this is a product roadmap, and A lot of these things might change even before the product comes out as GA. That's just something I wanted to keep you guys informed before I go ahead. Next slide, please. All right. So here is a screenshot of what an intelligent workspace experience will look like. So notice the search at the top to search the relevant information across applications and files. So you could see how it is different from the traditional Citrix gateway or the storefront login, where you used to see all your applications and desktops, and you used to launch individual applications. But what we have coming up in our intelligent workspace is something like this, where we'll have a notification feed which will be populated using micro apps feature that enable one-click actions and use machine learning and artificial intelligence to populate the feed with insights for individual workers. So the micro apps is something which the Citrix administrators can configure using Citrix Cloud to allow users to discover and act upon information without needing to launch the applications or switch contexts. So they will be surfaced within the Citrix Workspace notification feed. And micro apps will allow users to both perform actions right in the feed and also see information pulled from the application. So as you can see on the screen, the applications like Concur or Workday is feeding the user with information like approving a new expense report or approving a time of being requested. The user does not have to launch Concur and Workday separately and approve and get these things done. Instead, everything is fed within this Citrix Workspace for quick actions. And obviously that reduces the number of context switches and improves productivity for the end users. So with the next evolution of Workspace, we will utilize micro apps to push more information to users versus users having to drill down and pull information out of an application. And prompt actions allowing the user to perform an action right within their feed on the micro app instead of digging into the native applications. And of course, the experience will include the same organizing features that are in the Citrix Workspace today, so that users get easy access to all their applications, desktops, and content in one place. So this is what we have coming up in the next few months in terms of Citrix Workspace and how it's going to evolve into this intelligent workspace experience. So with that said, I'm going to hand it back to Sharok to help us how the identity and access management space has evolved and how Acceptto integrates with Citrix Workspace and really help in the concept of eliminating passwords and keep those identity thefts at the minimum. So back to you, Sharok.
Thank you, Anil. I think one of the key things is about the power that we can the data and the power that Workspace provides us, and especially on the Citrix Analytics side, being able to ingest the data from, before I leave this slide, ingest the data from the Citrix. And we have been working closely with the Workspace team and with Citrix in general, and also the CAS team to integrate some of the capabilities and features. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our secure, frictionless, and continuous. And Neil pointed out getting rid of passwords. Fundamentally, getting rid of passwords is not the only problem. It's an issue of not relying on any type of binary authentication, such as passwords or biometric, or even some of the 2FA and MFA solutions that I mentioned earlier. So in the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through, first of all, what the problem is and why this is an urgency that we need to fix today, and how we have been approaching it, and our partners have been taking advantage of it. Obviously, there's a high cost of data breaches to corporations, and whether you're a small, medium, or large enterprise, there's a huge impact when you get breached, and majority of these breaches, 81% plus of them, are associated with the breach of the credentials. The brand impact, the loss of client trust, the high cost to remediate, all of these are a huge tax on any organization. And net, you have to assume that all your credentials are already been breached. The fact that every week, or every day, I should say, if not every hour, we hear somebody new is getting breached. The reality of it is that we have to make the assumption that all of your credentials have already been breached. And we claim that even those you have not yet created. And the reason is, if the system is breached, is just basically somebody is waiting for you to even create your new passwords. And as time goes forward, your newly created credential, your resetted password, or your sign up as a new user, all of that is breached. You just don't know about it, and that's what the paradigm shift that we need to basically enforce, that people recognize that everything is breached, and now comes how do we protect against these binary authentications, and how to protect the data and the privacy of the consumers. There is another major problem, is that it is not about authentication. Earlier I mentioned about Acceptto, that what we do is we do pre-auth intelligence, at-auth, step-up authentication, but most importantly, it is post-authorization that matters. And the traditional legacy solutions don't do this very well, and they only focus at authentication. But reality is that all the evil actually happens after the authorization has been given to a user, and whether the person has a legitimate username and password, or credential, or two-factor, or MFA or not, whether it is an inside job or not, but majority of the evil, I mean, not majority, all evil happens after you have already got in, right? And if you look at the history, many of these breaches actually go undetected for months, and some of them for years. They are undetected, and till by the time that people are informed and it comes to the public view, there's hundreds of millions of people data that has already been compromised. So what do we call binary authentication? I use the word binary authentication is the traditional binary authentication methods, which has a chronic issue, and the chronic issue is that by themselves are not reliable. Passwords, everybody hates them. It is a necessary evil. The problem is not the passwords, it's about the humans to some extent, that they reuse their password. It is the hygiene that needs to be applied, and the fact that the enterprises, in some cases, they leave the passwords unhashed and unencrypted, and therefore once they are victim of a data breach, a lot of passwords are breached for the users, and therefore a lot of other accounts are compromised as well. In the last 3 decades, two-factor authentication, from the good old RSA keys that you carried with yourself to the modern methods using mobile phones, which we also support as well. Two-factor and multi-factor in general, they provide the extra friction and they're inconvenient. Biometric is actually, perhaps it's very interesting because the whole world is talking about biometric. The key thing here is that we need to keep in mind that biometric as a binary authentication is perhaps one of the most dangerous binary authentications of all time. And the reason is because there is no, how should I call it? There is no way that you can reset your biometric, right? I'm going to pause for a second. Anil, you can hear me well. I want to make sure that.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, fantastic. So the biometric being breached is a very dangerous thing because of the fact that you cannot fundamentally you cannot reset them. Now there's significant amount of effort on traffic analysis and intelligence, and as you can see from the daily breaches, just the traffic analysis by itself is not sufficient to protect it. Now, what is the future of identity and access management and in connection with authentication is what we need is a continuous behavioral authentication. And the reason that is needed is because most of the solutions today claim that they have adaptive solutions and they have, but reality of it is that they completely neglect much of the context that is available to them. And if even there is a lot of context, they don't really use it, or they don't apply the right expert systems and applications to them to be able to unleash the power of the data that is available from the context and the behavior. And Dr. Steph here is going to go and talk to you a little bit about context and behavior later. So I'm going to leave that till he gets to his section. Now, I mentioned that a lot of companies that they claim that they have adaptive solutions, they don't deliver continuous. This is actually very interesting. Just recently, one of the Gartner lead analysts in security emphasized on the fact that the continuous was not explicitly in the definition of CARTA, and but it is a very important element of the word adaptive. And the key thing is that even though that some of the vendors label themselves as delivering adaptive solutions, they really don't deliver this continuousness. And again, I take you back to the point of, remember, all the evil happens post-authorization after you get in. So it just doesn't happen that once you are in and you're good to go. It is not about authentication, two-factor, multi-factor. It is about continuous authentication. So in order to do that, you need to be context aware and also be aware of the behavior of the person, not only the context, but also the behavior of the person. So behavioral versus binary authentication, it basically unleashes the power of context that is available. It is, as a result, it becomes frictionless, and it becomes, you can get rid of your passwords and in general your binary, or actually maybe not even get rid of your passwords, because some organizations, they're married to their passwords and they want to stay with them. In that case, the breach of the passwords becomes benign, because passwords become only one of the elements of the authentication. The other piece is about dynamic level of assurance. Dynamic level of assurance, it basically is about fusion of the attributes post-authorization, and then recognizing that if during the authorization, post-authorization, if there was a new risk that was injected into the system, such as an IP change or a session hijack or something like that, then automatically the system recognizes and switches the level of assurance to by using dynamic LOA to get to a higher level of assurance and demanding for a step-up authentication again. And then that allows us to have a runtime continuous risk-based, true risk-based authentication. And again, I emphasize, just as Ante Allen and others emphasize emphasizing this year is about continuousness. So how does that work? The way it works, and for the simplicity, there are hundreds of signals that they come in, but I'm basically in this graph, I'm trying to identify three specific things. One is the multimodal sources and multi-sources that they come into the mix by recognizing whether the user is a trusted user and whether the behavior is correct or not. Some of these elements include our KYC, Know Your Customer solutions, such as our device and browser trust elements on the left and on the right of this diagram. And some of it comes from the mobile analytics that we have an SDK and we have an enterprise-ready off-the-shelf app as well that can be customized. And then most importantly is the ingestion of the existing enterprise investment from the customers, from the enterprises SIM to DLP to third-party solutions, their VPN, and basically grabbing the insights from the other tools and being able to ingest the data and basically graph the normality of a user and identify the anomalies, derived anomalies, and feeding it into our machine learning engine, measure it against the tolerance towards the risk, and basically via that contextual data fusion, unleashing the power of the existing enterprise insights and signals in order to calculate the risk throughout the session. Now, as a result, if you think about it, having the graphed normality of a user, where they are, what devices they use, what IP addresses they come in with, what is their proximity and their location, what is their location trust, how close they are to their phones versus their laptops, how many times have they authenticated from this place, what applications they use. Basically, your fingerprint of your digital DNA to basically to enable graphing the normality of the particular user of interest and feeding it to the risk engine and calculating in real time throughout the session whether there is a risk, and if there is a risk, applying the appropriate friction. This risk versus friction within the context of the time will allow us to deliver a low friction solution for the good users and inject friction for in-doubt and threat actors. And this allows us to have a continuous authentication throughout enrollment of a user. When you buy a new laptop, when you buy it and you enroll a new phone, and pre-auth intelligence and throughout authentication and post-authorization. And this allows us to actually deliver something that will give us a unified user journey that they are all connected to the different stages of authentication, and they have a seamless common experience across the board. And this slide actually hopefully will represent what I mean by that continuous unified user journey. When a user comes in, and the very first thing that comes in, you have to have a device in order to connect and to access the data. That itself is the tip of the start of the journey, where you enroll a device or an enterprise issues a device to you as your trusted device. That enrollment by itself classifies the number of devices and the type of devices that you have, what version of the OS you have, what screen size, all the information that is derived from the trusted device besides the unique token that that device has. Then throughout the journey, you will go through stages 2, 3, and 4. And again, pre-auth intelligence, being able to detect the information about the user and predicting that whether this person is trusted or not, and whether this is Neil versus Shirok versus Steph is very important. And that allows us that when we get to the authentication stage, we have the option of having a frictionless authentication for trusted and good users, and what is classified as pass-through versus a step-up authentication as needed. Now, all of that is good and dandy, and it is the typical standard way of somewhat of a device trust, pre-auth intelligence, and context-aware risk-based authentication that some other providers provide. But the most important piece, and what's actually is fantastically integrated with Citrix Worspace and Citrix Analytics, is about the continuous authentication, which is stage 4, which is where you are basically, while ingesting data from all the existing enterprise assets, you keep looking at anomalies of the particular user on their behavior digitally, and what applications, line of business applications, are they using. If they're all of a sudden downloading 5 terabytes of data, which is abnormal for a typical user, and at that point we will basically detect the anomaly and usher them out to the front door. I'm going to pause for a second, and Neil, if there's anything that you'd like to add, or Steph.
Completely agree with your point, Shirok. In terms of the integration itself, it's really seamless. We have Acceptto really integrates well with our Citrix Workspace, and we also have option to integrate with our Citrix ADC, formerly NetScaler, to kind of enable the traditional radius and SAML based authentication, which customers choose. And like mentioned on the slide, it doesn't matter if the customer environment is on the cloud, on-premise, or both. Acceptto and Citrix Workspace work no matter where the customer environment resides. And also the fact that Acceptto is FIDO compliant should be something which adds adds more trust for customers to choose Acceptto.
Excellent. Thank you, Anil. So yeah, it's the key thing. This slide actually shows the supported platform, or a subset of the platforms that we support. We basically, our proprietary solution combined with the standards, as Anil pointed out, FIDO 1 and FIDO 2 solutions, basically provides an end-to-end solution to Citrix customers and clients. And by the fact that we are agnostic to whether we are ourselves the IDP, or whether somebody like Okta or Ping or Microsoft are the IDP, it empowers the enterprise to take advantage of the power of the existing solutions and step up their intelligent authentication post-authorization. Of course, these proprietary solutions are patent protected. We have 11 issued and pending patents that are in the works. We give a complete solution of being an IDP, SSO, and MFA, and risk engine. And in cases that we need to integrate with other solution providers, the same way that we integrate with Citrix, we integrate with all other solution providers as IDP providers. And we have, as Anil pointed out, we have a mix of some of our customers, they prefer to have something on-premise because of the regulations and the geo and the country guidelines or the sector, in health sector, for example, versus financial institutions. There is a mix of demand for on-premise versus cloud versus hybrid. and we support all three, and we have deployed all three cases. And obviously, we have a mobile web workstation and also even IoT solution. You see the reference to people like HID, where we even integrate the signals from physical access. And if there is any custom applications that is homebrewed and is not standard application, we do have our REST API, which we integrate if you're not a SAML or OpenID Connect application that you want to integrate with the solution. We can provide that support that through our REST API. Now, with that said, how hard is it to integrate our Acceptto SSO with Workspace? Actually, is rather simple and easy. There's a three-step into it as far as the integration procedure. You basically need to connect to Azure AD if you're a cloud. If not, if you're using on-premise AD and you're not connected to Azure AD, you basically use the standard radius to AD and to us, where the radius is connected to the cloud services of Acceptto, or on-premise if in cases that you need on-premise. I'm going to go walk you through the scenario of Azure AD, and since Workspace is very heavily focused on cloud, let's just walk through how we configure Workspace environment and configure it to take advantage of Azure AD and connect to Acceptto for the continuous authentication. Really, it is super easy. 3 steps. You sign into the cloud, and actually I have a 1 minute or 1.5 minute video that I'll show you to demonstrate that truly how easy it is. You really need to configure the Citrix Workspace to use Azure AD if that's what you want to do. Then you basically enable the Active Directory to be looking at the Azure Active Directory, and once you have connected to the Acceptto appliance, AD appliance, then everything is plug and play. Let me actually walk you through it, and literally this is less than 2 minutes configuration. That's probably, you'll see how fast and easy it is. So this video is going to go ahead and demonstrate to you on how we're going to integrate with an existing solution, Workspace, and how to empower the continuous authentication. So you basically go through, you activate Azure Active Directory is not enabled, you go ahead and enable it, and you confirm for the enterprise. And then at that point, you go and set the flag for the Azure to be enabled, and it is already set. Then the next step, now that you have the AD, Azure AD enabled, now you go back and you go to the Workspace configuration on the authentication, and you click on the Azure AD, and voila, you're done. It's completed. The task is completed, and Azure AD for Workspace is connected, and then the enterprise through our AD appliance will talk to the Azure AD. And then next is to test it and see how it works, and I have a quick 1 minute video also to show you how that works. So the way it works is very simple. Again, you do your traditional, you go into the portal that you want to go, and once you get to Workspace, you get redirected. You enter your username, and you get redirected to the Acceptto SAML that is integrated with Acceptto. You have the choice of doing either with username and password. If you use username and password, you get your method of authentication. You get a push notification on the side, or any type of authentication. And here you have an immutable audit on your right side on your phone. Now, if you don't want to use your traditional username and passwords, there's an easier way. You go through the same flow, and in that case, you basically select the QR code. You scan the QR code with Acceptto's mobile app. It's called It's Me, and you get a push notification. In that case, you authenticate, and again, you have an immutable audit trail on your phone, and you're in. Very fast. I don't know whether I need to play this again or not, because it was way too fast. But the reality of it, it is truly that fast. It's whether you use username passwords or whether you use a QR code with no username, no password. It's a very solid user experience with least amount of friction. And Neil, do you think that I should play the video one more time, or people can later on can look at the webcast and replay it again?
Yes, we'll be sharing the recording with all the registrants and attendees. So we are good. We could proceed.
Right. Before I leave this slide, one of the key things that you need to keep in mind is on the right side, through a single pane of glass, you basically have an immutable audit trail of all your transactions. This allows us to not only use the events of authentication as signals and insights to the best next activity, but it also allows us to go forward with detecting anomalies, and that immutable audit trail pushes the being aware of what is happening on the user's behalf all the way to the edge. I mentioned earlier that sometimes, in average, it takes 8 months for a breach to be out. In this case, it is real time. If somebody attempts to log in on your behalf, in real time, you will know that somebody has made an attempt to log in, which means that they have your password. Okay, so there are a couple of things I wanted to show you, and then I need to pass to Dr. Steph as we're running out of time. There is a number of continuous authentication examples that we can give you, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one anomaly, and then let Steph to talk about the options. Or in interest of time, actually, maybe I can, let's see, let's just do post-authorization anomaly detection. This is basically a quick one that shows that post-authorization, an abnormal event happened within the Workspace environment. And basically what happens is the user logs in to a third-party app, and they with the QR code with no username and password. And again, the audit trail is on the right side, keeping track of everything that is happening. And if it happens that a user wants to switch, let's say, their IP, and they VPN into something that is not whitelisted, the moment that the user does that, a significant event is detected by the engine. And these are the insights that Anil pointed out on his slide. And as you can see, because of that significant event, the user is logged out, and a notification is sent to the user's phone as a significant event, and the user is reminded that they just broke the policy going to or maybe at an airport Wi-Fi, and they basically have the history of the fact that they were logged out. And with that, I want to switch to Dr. Steph to talk a little bit about behavioral modeling and context versus behavior, and hopefully we'll have enough time for a few questions.
Thank you, Shahrukh. So I will talk about how we model users' behavior with artificial intelligence and especially machine learning to achieve continuous behavioral authentication. So authentication has to be not only multifactorial or binary even. No, it has to, well, it created the word plurifactorial. So meaning that we don't only look at a small number of factors. No, we look at as much factors as we can possibly get. And machine learning is exceptionally well to deal with a lot of input sources and signals. So all facets of your own behavior characterize exactly who you are, and they cannot be tampered with easily. And unlike biometrics, like Shahrukh mentioned before, they constantly are changed over time. Our behavior is not static. It's something that adapts. Maybe we use a new software at the company. So that means that we have a complete different behavior by logging and accessing it. So authentication, therefore, cannot be based on simple rules. It has to consider the whole context of a transaction. And that's the point where the post-authorization comes into play. Because if you're authorized already and your behavior changes suddenly or abruptly, and the transaction becomes, well, suspicious, then the system has to react. So right now, the current state of the art are rule-based systems. And they have their downsides and their really excellent aspects to it. So they are written by human experts. So on the downside, that means they're expensive to maintain. And they are slow with respect to ever-changing vectors of attacks. So every time some threat actor defines or finds a new way of attacking a system, you have to catch up with that and react to it. So this is slow, but on the well side, well, it's well understood. It's reliable. It's written by an expert that you trusted. But that also means that it's limited in complexity because it is written by a human and he has to write it down or program it, basically. And the expressiveness, so the way of how you can describe the context decreases accordingly. On the other hand, AI ML algorithms have less of this drawbacks. Some might say they are considered to be a black box. And that raises, of course, questions of reliability. But modern machine learning has advanced so much that we can create interpretable models that are still very, very able of detecting the complex relationships in data. So they are basically able to find out in the really vast set of input signals to find relations in between that define things that would escape the human eye. And they are complex. So from this multitude of signals that they have and proceed and digest, they can model very complex behaviors, and that allows for an automation. So that means you don't have to actively react and write something to a new threat. It will be detected much longer before a human detected it, and it will adapt to it. Okay, now the next slide, please. So AI, I want to give a brief historical overview here and keep it very short. AI is a lot in the media. You hear it everywhere right nowadays. Funny, it's in fact quite old. So the term artificial intelligence, which is, in my opinion, very hard to define, is from the 50s. So it means the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. So we try to make a machine or make a software that is able of solving a problem, making a decision, even maybe possible of reasoning. No, it does not really describe how it does so. Machine learning, on the other hand, is much closer and more narrowly defined. And also that term derives from the 50s. And it basically means that a computer software, if it digests data, so if it makes experiences on its own and overviews it in performance, if it's able to get better over time by looking more at data, then it's called a learning machine. So it's the progressive improvement that is important. And the good thing is they are not explicitly programmed. So of course the algorithms are programmed and defined, but they evolve over time. So this leads me to the data sources that they can digest and proceed. So artificial intelligence and moreover machine learning extracts knowledge derived from data. And this can be, on the one hand, the context. So what I mean with context is diverse, very high dimensional, so making very data with a lot of experts. Static information that describes the user and maybe the device that he's using. It can be device browser fingerprints, including human biometrics, or simply the fact which resource you try to access. Those can be learned by traditional methods very well. It gets more interesting if we take it up to the next level and consider the behavior of a user. And a behavior means basically the sequence of actions, the temporal aspect of what you do, and also of the things that you do on a regular basis. So that behavior is related really to habits in the end. And these patterns in the temporal domain are very characteristic for our lives. And it exposes not only your habits, it exposes, if you look at the whole user base of a company, the group dynamics. You can even use that to identify and label and classify locations. So examples for that source of data could be your commuting behavior, how you and when you do your leisure actions, or what is your work routine, so heading from one meeting to the other, or accessing an online resource or web page. So IML constantly learns to recognize what is going on and classify what is something that should be avoided and prevented, or requires, for instance, to increase the friction, to ask for another level of security, or simply lock a user out of a system. So next slide, please. So let me give you an example. So imagine we have a user in a company, and he's trying to access a resource of a company from his phone. And his phone is completely trusted. His behavior that it exposes is perfectly fine. And the behavior, well, actually the phone is used in a bar to access the resource. For the phone and for the private behavior of the person, well, being on the bar, let's say it's a Tuesday and it's a regular event where I meet my friends. So every Tuesday we go to the same bar. So it is obviously normal behavior that I'm exposing, and my phone captures that and trusts in it. On the other hand, I never, ever access a company resource outside the premise. And in this scenario, it might be that I left my phone unlocked on the table and was distracted, someone snatched it, so it could not lock again. Or I went to the bathroom or somebody else stole it. Or maybe I had a couple of beers too much and want to access something that I shouldn't do that at that state. In general, such non-compliance behavior should be or has to be rejected by a rule that has been handwritten. But as I mentioned, there's so many facets and aspects on the behavior that it's hard for a human to capture all the possibility things. This simple example would have been caught pretty easily. On the other hand, our continuous behavioral authentication would have recognized this anomaly. It would have seen there's a discrepancy between my private and my professional behavior. And it would be very obvious. And it would result in a very, very low score, level of assurance. It would report the incident or cancel the possibly planned transaction. Next slide, Charlotte, please. So coming back to the architecture. So we compute with our system. We use machine learning as a measure of identity access. And we call it a mixture of experts. So as we have seen, human expert rules, they are irreplaceable. Of course, you want to be able to define what, for instance, your employees are allowed to do or not. So our system allows you to define those rules. We have a domain-specific language that makes it as easy as speaking what you want to do. You can even do it programmatically in a number of programming languages. But as I said, they are limited. On the other hand, we have machine learning that captures your behavior. It really finds out what is normal for you and when you behave suspiciously. And that can interact also with their expert rules. Can even suggest new rules when it detected. So you get an alert if some of the employees does something that he's not allowed to do. You get an alert and you can derive your rule from that manually, easy. But it also takes the context. So it looks at device browser fingerprints. It finds out what is normal and what is abnormal, which has been observed before, which is actually known to be some imposed personality of a user. So with that, I'd like to pass the word back to Sharon.
Thank you, Steph. Very, very good explanation, especially the differentiation between context and behavior and the importance of the ingestion of you use the word plurifactor versus the traditional multi-factor. And that actually shows that the factors are evergreen and is not a defined 5 factors or 12 factors. It's not about the number of factors, it's about the weight that these factors have for each individual user at any particular period of time on a particular application within the Citrix Workspace, again, being able to capture the insights as part of the elements of those Pleura factor element that we ingest to detect anomalies and detect risk. So basically, by doing that, is we are able to calculate a risk score based on the risky behavior of a good user versus a threat actor, and we prevent the access, as Steph pointed out, depending on the policy, and basically either usher the person to a higher level of assurance and re-authentication, or basically continuously analyzing the behavior, and if needed, step up for new authentication or completely get them out of the session, as Steph pointed out. And this is all done based on the risk score that is computed by the Accepto's proprietary AML engine and algorithms, which delivers a dynamic level of assurance throughout the session. I hope that it makes sense to you, and the key thing is that, as Anil pointed out, Workspace provides a significant number of intelligence and insights throughout the session, regardless of the line of business applications that are used by the user. And as a result, we ingest that data combined with the CAS, with the system, with the Citrix Analytics engine, to give a safer and more protected environment, while we deliver least amount of friction for the users to get in, the good users to get in. And Anil, back to you. Unfortunately, it seems like we have very little time for questions and answers. Sorry for going long.
No problem, Shirok. Thanks very much for the wonderful presentation, you and Dr. Stefan. I think a lot of insights shared, which should be very useful to our attendees today. We'll take a couple of quick questions, and obviously, if there's anything to be addressed personally, we'll reach out over emails. So first question is, what signals does Accepto use to help a certain identity?
I'm going to go ahead and answer it, and then Steph, if you want to add anything to it. It all depends on the enterprise configuration. Obviously, every enterprise provides a set of assets, such as the devices that are assigned to the user. And then because of our mobile SDK that is integrated into an existing app or as a standalone application, we get a significant number of signals from the mobile. Just these two alone provide the device trust, the browser trust, and then some spatiotemporal elements that allows us to recognize that if Anil is in New York and a login is happening from Portland, Oregon, or from San Francisco, you detect the anomaly of the proximity of your phone versus your laptop. That's a very simple example of it. We also ingest a significant amount of data from Citrix Analytics, both at the gross level of the risk score of the user at any given minute of the day from Citrix Analytics, or other solution providers such as Google Chronicle and Sentinel from Microsoft, from their SIM or Sumo Logic and whatnot. Those signals also are ingested. If you remember, I had a slide that showed the ingestion of the signals from the different sources. So it is a combination of user context, user behavior, and the systems insights, such as the CAS insights into the risk score of a particular user or the risk score associated with a particular line of business application. So it is context, behavioral, and system intelligence from the existing enterprise infrastructure.
All right. To follow up to that, what is the typical behavioral learning period?
I might take this one.
The
Or if
learning
you want.
period is, yeah, go ahead.
No,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Steph. Go ahead and
Okay.
answer that.
So it
No,
depends.
please. You're the expert in this.
All right. It depends on, of course, what you want or which facets of the behavior you want to learn. So if it's, for instance, your commuting behavior, you will have it as early as perhaps 3 to 4 days to expose that. If it's on the distinction, which is your, sorry if I take the example of commutation, but it's the most visually explainable. If it's about deriving where's your home location, then of course you need some 3 or 4 weekends and 3 or 4 weeks in general to learn. So the system scales automatically. So by the frequency of the events, it adapts slowly over time, and the model gets more and more precise over time, and also captures more long-term relationships automatically. So that's basically imprint in this algorithms we use.
Yeah, I want to add that within 2 or 3 weeks, fundamentally, you have an average, depending on whether you live in North America or not, if you have 3 to 5 devices that you log in, and you have 2 or 3 locations that are trusted, including the bar that Steph mentioned about on every Tuesday when he gets with his friends and pals. Over time, over less than 2 to 3 weeks, these contexts and these elements and these behaviors are already captured as normal. And keep in mind that once you establish normal, what you get, the result and the action you get is frictionless authentication. And then while something is still in the learning, you get the traditional additional friction that applies till the expert system completely learns what normal is for you.
Right. Thanks for that, Sharok and Dr. Stefan. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. There are a few more questions. I think we could get back to them over email. And I see a few attendees asking if the webinar is being recorded. To answer that, yes. And we will share the recording link with all the attendees and registrants through your email addresses. And with that said, we are about to end today's webinar. I want to take a moment and thank Sharok and Dr. Stephen once again for making this fantastic presentation and sharing great insights with us, and always a pleasure with working with Acceptto and their team. And last but not the least, I want to thank everyone who made time to attend today's webinar in this webinar series. Any final thoughts, Sharok or Dr. Stefan?
No, I want to thank the audience and look forward to hear the questions that we could not answer it because of the time. I went a little bit too verbose. I apologize for that. And please send us questions to us or to the Citrix team, to Anil, Steph, and myself. And hopefully we can answer any questions, technical questions that you have about integration with Citrix and how Acceptto engine works all together.
Thanks. That's great. Thanks very much again, Sharok and Dr. Stefan. And that shall conclude today's broadcast. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.